What happens when trusted educators become the masterminds of a million-dollar criminal enterprise? Today, we dive into a shocking scandal that rocked the Texas education system and left two historic black high schools grappling with betrayal. In Houston, where education has long been a pathway to progress, a sophisticated scheme involving fake teacher certifications has exposed deep-rooted corruption at the highest levels of school administration. More than 200 uncertified teachers, over $1 million, and a basketball coach who traded integrity for profit. This isn't just another crime story, it's a tale that strikes at the heart of our education system and raises troubling questions about who we trust with our children's futures. In the bustling city of Houston, Texas, a scandal of unprecedented proportions has sent shockwaves through the education community. At the center of this controversy are two of the city's most historically significant institutions, Booker T. Washington High School and Jack Yates Senior High School, the first two historically black high schools in Houston. These schools, which have stood as pillars of education and hope in their communities for generations, became ground zero for what prosecutors describe as one of the most extensive teacher certification fraud schemes in Texas history. More than 200 individuals across the state paid thousands of dollars each to have someone else take their teacher certification exams, effectively buying their way into classrooms. The scheme reached far beyond these historic institutions, spreading like a web across Texas classrooms. But what makes this case particularly heartbreaking is that the alleged masterminds weren't outsiders. They were trusted educators and administrators, including a beloved basketball coach and two assistant principals, who held positions of respect and authority within these historic institutions. The scope of this deception is staggering. We're not talking about a few isolated incidents. Prosecutors have uncovered evidence of over 400 fraudulent certification tests, leaving education officials scrambling to identify and remove unqualified teachers from classrooms across the state. The implications of this breach of trust extend far beyond the immediate criminal charges, threatening to undermine decades of hard-won progress and respect these institutions have earned in their communities. At the heart of this elaborate scheme stood Vincent Grayson, a man who spent nearly 2 decades building trust as a basketball coach at Booker T. Washington High School. But behind his respected facade, prosecutors say he was orchestrating a $1 million operation that made a mockery of teacher certification standards. Here's how the scheme worked. Teaching candidates would pay Grayson $2,500 for guaranteed passage of their certification exams. But instead of helping them study or prepare, Grayson had a far simpler solution. Enter Nicholas Newton, an assistant principal who allegedly became the scheme's professional test taker. The process was brazen in its simplicity, yet devastating in its effectiveness. Certification candidates would arrive at the testing center, sign in, and promptly leave. Minutes later, Newton would take their place and complete the exam. The deception was so routine that Newton reportedly became bold enough to take multiple tests simultaneously. In fact, when investigators finally caught up with him in February 2024, he was logged into 2 separate terminals, taking tests under different names at the same time. To ensure the smooth operation of their enterprise, Grayson cultivated a network of complicit test proctors, paying them approximately 20% of each candidate's fee to look the other way. The money flowed freely, with prosecutors estimating Grayson's earnings exceeded $1 million, though the true total may never be known due to untraceable cash payments. The operation targeted desperate candidates, many of whom had previously failed their certification exams multiple times. These individuals would drive from all corners of Texas, sometimes traveling 4 or more hours to reach the Houston testing center, where they were guaranteed to pass with flying colors. The scheme was so successful that it created a suspicious pattern of suddenly successful test takers that would eventually contribute to its downfall. Like many criminal enterprises, this scheme might have continued indefinitely, if not for one person's conscience. In 2023, a former coach applying for a police position in another part of Texas had what prosecutors called an attack of conscience. This single act of honesty would ultimately expose years of systematic fraud. The Texas Education Agency began noticing peculiar patterns. Teachers who had repeatedly failed their certification exams elsewhere were suddenly passing with remarkable scores at specific Houston testing centers. Even more suspicious, these candidates were willing to drive hours across the state just to take their exams at these locations. This unusual migration of test takers raised immediate red flags. As investigators dug deeper, the evidence mounted quickly. They discovered hundreds of successful examinations that shared impossible similarities. The investigation expanded as they began interviewing certified teachers across Texas. Nearly 24 educators cooperated with authorities, each telling virtually identical stories about how they obtained their certifications. The scope of the fraud was staggering. Investigators uncovered at least 400 fraudulent tests, resulting in approximately 200 falsely certified teachers scattered throughout Texas classrooms. But perhaps most disturbing was what the investigation revealed about who had gained access to schools through these false credentials. Among the fraudulently certified teachers were at least 2 individuals later charged with serious crimes involving minors. The investigation moved swiftly from this point, culminating in February 2024 when Nicholas Newton was caught in the act, simultaneously taking certification tests under multiple names. This dramatic moment would lead to the scheme's final unraveling, resulting in multiple arrests and sending shockwaves through the Texas education system that continue to reverberate today. The consequences of this certification scheme reach far beyond the immediate legal ramifications for those involved. Right now, hundreds of students across Texas are potentially being taught by educators who never legitimately earned their credentials. This isn't just about academic integrity, it's about the fundamental safety and quality of education our children receive. Perhaps most chilling is the revelation that this fraud enabled predators to gain access to our schools. We now know of at least 2 individuals who used these false certifications to secure teaching positions, only to later face charges related to inappropriate conduct with minors. One faces charges of indecency with a child, while another has been charged with online solicitation. And these might just be the cases we know about. The damage to these historic institutions cuts particularly deep. Booker T. Washington High School, originally known as Colored High, and Jack Yates Senior High School weren't just schools. They were pillars of hope and progress in Houston's Black community. These institutions spent decades building reputations as launching pads for successful alumni, including prominent journalists, artists, and community leaders. Now that legacy is tarnished by this betrayal of trust. The financial scope is equally staggering. With over $1 million changing hands through this scheme, we're looking at one of the largest education fraud cases in Texas history. But the real cost isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in the potential impact on students who were taught by unqualified educators, in the erosion of public trust, and in the damage to the reputation of these historically significant schools. The Texas Education Agency now faces the monumental task of identifying and removing fraudulently certified teachers from classrooms across the state. This process could take months, if not years, creating further disruption in an already strained education system. Schools must now scramble to verify their teachers' credentials while maintaining the quality of education for their students. For communities that have historically faced educational inequities, this scandal strikes a particularly painful blow. These schools were meant to be bastions of opportunity and excellence. Instead, the very people entrusted with maintaining these standards have been caught undermining them for personal gain. The community's reaction to this scandal has been nothing short of heartbreaking. Robert Boo Lee Williams, a 1967 graduate of Jack Yates Senior High School, could barely hold back his emotions when discussing the betrayal. "We are fighting hard to overcome, to show that we are more than qualified," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. For alumni like Williams, this isn't just about a certification scheme, it's about decades of pride and progress being undermined. These schools represent more than just buildings of learning. Booker T. Washington High School stands as the oldest Black school in Texas, a testament to resilience and achievement. Over the years, both schools have produced remarkable alumni, from acclaimed journalist Roland Martin to celebrated artists Felicia Rashad and Debbie Allen. Each graduate adds to a legacy of excellence that has defined these institutions for generations. The Houston Federation of Teachers has expressed profound disappointment, noting that thousands of legitimate teachers put in countless hours of study and hard work to earn their certifications properly. This scandal not only dishonors their dedication, but also threatens to overshadow the historic significance these schools hold in Texas education. As one community member put it, "This isn't just about a crime. It's about preserving our history and ensuring our future educators uphold the values that made these schools beacons of hope in our community." And so we're left with some deeply troubling questions about the state of our education system. How did this scheme manage to operate undetected for so long? What does it say about the pressures facing our educators that so many would resort to such desperate measures? And perhaps most importantly, how do we rebuild trust in a system that's been so fundamentally shaken? The ripple effects of this scandal will be felt for years to come, not just in Houston, but across Texas. It's a stark reminder that the integrity of our educational institutions isn't just about passing tests. It's about upholding the sacred trust between teachers and students, between schools and communities. If you're as fascinated by stories of corruption and justice as we are, you'll want to check out our curated collection of true crime books in the description below. And don't forget to share your thoughts with us. What do you think could have been done to prevent this massive breach of trust? Until next time, I'm Sean Dupree, and you've been listening to The Real Crime Diary. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and we'll see you tomorrow with another daily dose of crime. Hey listeners, welcome back to The Real Crime Diary. I'm your host, Sean Dupree. If you tuned in last time, we had a deep dive into the disturbing history of power abuse across different eras, looking at the connection between dominance, control, and how it plays out even today. We touched on scandals from the past and compared them with some modern-day examples, showing how these patterns of abuse, unfortunately, persist. One of the most insightful tools we've explored to understand this is my book, Power, Pleasure, and Pain, a study of abuse through time. It's not just a historical account, but an interdisciplinary approach to understanding why this keeps happening. We draw from history, philosophy, and modern case studies to explain how figures like Dominique Pellico, Harvey Weinstein, and others have exploited their positions of power for their own gain, often protected by the very systems meant to stop them. Recap of last interaction. In our last live stream, we discussed how libertinism, philosophically introduced by figures like Marquis de Sade, has shaped the way power and pleasure have been entangled throughout history. This concept ties directly into how figures like Weinstein operated, as we saw parallels between de Sade's fictional characters and the way powerful men manipulated their victims in real life. You guys had some amazing comments, asking how societal structures have allowed these behaviors to go unchecked for so long. It's a crucial question, and one that the book addresses deeply. Why this book is valuable. Now, what's powerful about Power, Pleasure, and Pain is its ability to break down these historical patterns and link them to the present. You're not just reading about ancient Rome or Enlightenment philosophy, you're seeing how these ideologies are alive today. The book uncovers how sexual violence and control have been systematically woven into the fabric of societies from ancient times right up to the modern era. It's about understanding not just the individual predators, but the systems that protect them, whether it's in royal courts, religious institutions, or today's corporate and entertainment worlds. Through these historical lenses, we also explore movements like #MeToo that are beginning to dismantle these structures. The fight for justice is far from over, but as the book demonstrates, we are in the midst of a cultural shift where legal reforms are finally addressing these long-standing issues. It's more than a history lesson. It's a guide to understanding and supporting change today. What's next? If you want to dive deeper, I suggest picking up Power, Pleasure, and Pain, a study of abuse through time. It's available now, and trust me, it will change the way you think about power, pleasure, and control. We've even got some exclusive content coming up on the channel where we'll be exploring the book's case studies in even more detail, so stay tuned for that. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to The Real Crime Diary so you don't miss any updates. Let's keep this conversation going, because understanding the past is key to changing the future.